Hey everybody, and welcome to the Everything Voiceover podcast. My name is Justin D. Torres. The Everything Voiceover podcast is brought to you by the Voice Realm, where only professional voice actors are listed. Today, I'm with Bernardo Cubría. Hello there, Bernardo.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Bernardo was a part of this amazing film that I'm sure everyone out there has seen, and if they haven't, they better get out there as soon as possible. Coco, which came out a few weeks ago from Pixar, which is an amazing movie that honors Mexican heritage and culture, and it's filled with beautiful sights and everything. And I was floored by how heartfelt and amazing, and it was something that I think our society needed to see, has been needing for a long time. And the fact that Pixar did such a great film is amazing. Bernardo, how did it feel to number one be a part of such an amazing film, and what was your initial reaction to this beauty of a film?
Well, first I'll react to the movie itself. I cried for 2 hours, which, if you ask my wife, is not a difficult thing for me to do in a movie. But for this one, it was pretty special. One, the care and heart and love with which it treated Mexican culture was so evident in the way that the story was written. You know, to be totally honest, I think a lot of us saw that Pixar was making a Day of the Dead movie. And, you know, the Day of the Dead is sometimes treated in certain ways in American films. And so, you know, I think all of us were a little nervous. And so the way with which this movie was took care of our culture was really meaningful and special. And also just the beauty of it. I mean, the music, the colors, it just really spoke to me in that deep, you know, soul place. And
Yeah.
I loved it. And then, to be totally frank, you know, I didn't know if I made the final cut. So for me, when I was watching it, I was more like, I wonder if I'm still in this thing. You know, I recorded voices for it about 1.5 years ago. So I really, you know, I was like, I guess I may be in it. And then, you know, my friend said, hey, I saw you in the credits. And so I was hoping I was in it, but you just never know with these things.
Yeah. I had a very similar reaction where I was just I saw it literally twice in a week, and I was so proud to see just good representation for Mexican culture, and especially since I'm Guamanian, but I have a parts. My grandmother is from my great grandmother is from Mexico, and then like there's so much mixed blood to be able to just see a good friggin' film.
Yeah.
When Everything Voiceover is mostly geared towards newer voiceover actors, and I see you've done a lot of like Spanish voiceover, and you've also done New York and you've been where are you at right now? Are you in
I live in LA now.
LA?
But
LA.
I was in New York for a long time. Yeah.
Cool. I guess what is your viewpoint of a new person trying to get into a voiceover? Do you have any advice that you might have for people out there who are trying to get into voiceover, or is there any like thing that you did that you wish you would have known before you got into the voiceover world?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my number one piece of advice would be to learn the technical aspects of recording a voiceover at your house,
Oh.
right? Like, I think a lot of people spend so much time like worrying about where do I get the job, and I mean, all of that is very important. But the number one way that you can get a voiceover agent and start booking voiceover work even without an agent is buy a microphone and, you know, figure out how you use GarageBand or Audacity or any of those programs and sit at home. And I think a really wonderful exercise is make your own voiceover reel.
Oh.
And I think anybody can do that. It's really not that hard. And I say that because I am not that smart with technology. I really am not. My wife is way better at all of those things. She usually helps me with these things. But I wanted to have a podcast a long time ago. And so I taught myself how to do that, you know? And through that, I learned how to use a microphone, how to set it up at home. And the better that your at-home studio is, the more work you're going to be able to get.
So what route did you take as far as voiceover? goes. Did you get the microphone and work from home, or did you and a combination with trying to get the agent and going? Because I know there's usually two different ways. There's the home route, and then there's like the studio route where you go in and you try and get an agent that way. And did you kind of double multitask that?
Well, so mine was kind of a mix of both. I got the microphone and I started learning how to use the old version of GarageBand, which was my favorite, and I miss it so much. Like the 5 people who care about that, but all of us do miss it. It was much easier for voiceover auditions. But so I got a microphone. I started learning how to do that, and so on like Actors Access and stuff, I would submit auditions, and that way I started getting some of my first work.
Great.
And then with that, when I first got a commercial agent, which was through a showcase,
Oh, cool.
it really, I'll say this to anybody who speaks Spanish, because that's more my world.
Hmm.
If you speak Spanish and you can speak Spanish with what they call a neutral accent,
Hmm.
which sadly kind of means like sounding like you're from the south of Mexico,
Okay.
then it's kind of easy to get a voiceover agent in Spanish. I mean, it's harder to keep one, right? But if you can act and you can read in Spanish, you should send an email to voiceover agents in whatever city you are, and more than likely one of them will want to work with you.
Wow. And you were this is English. It's like, were you raised uh, uh, speaking Spanish with, as a conversational Spanish person? I
Yeah,
mean,
well, I was really lucky because I moved to the States from Mexico City when I was 2, but my mom would charge us $1 for every English word spoken at home. It still does to this day. She,
okay.
she was really proud of where she was from, and I got very lucky in that my parents never bought into assimilation. They never kind of subscribed to that, and I was lucky in that that meant that I spoke Spanish at home. And I have made most of my money as an actor in Spanish, so I owe my mom a great amount of money and a deal of gratitude.
Well, maybe. Oh well, that's amazing. I always try and tell people, if they, like the learning of a new language. If you are someone who does not speak it conversationally or does not regularly speak it, I usually tell people to stay away from it. Even if you are learning a new language, unless you've immersed yourself into the culture, there's
Yeah.
always someone who's talking, who's had it, who's lived with it, and they're going to sound so much better than you regardless.
Yeah,
So,
and you know that learning a new language after like 21, one, it's really hard to do. And if that's like a tactic to try to make more money acting wise, I mean, God bless you. I don't know that that's going to work out though.
yeah, yeah, don't waste your time. So, you're also one of the few actors we've interviewed where you've been what I think of as like a more well-rounded actor, like the typical New York actor here, who not only does the voiceover, does the commercial work and all the film work and everything like that, literally getting a piece of every pie that you can get. How is the life of that kind of a hustler of an actor?
Well, I mean, it's hard, man. I never thought I would do voiceover acting, right? When I moved to New York, all I wanted to do was be a theater actor.
Ah,
I cared about, that was my passion. And then, you start working at theaters and even reputable ones, and you're still making $300 a week and you live in New York City. And
okay,
so it's just a matter of survival, because it's hard to be in a play rehearsing 8 hours a day and then going and doing a night job for 5 hours, right?
right.
So, if you can book a voiceover, it really alleviates some of that tension. And so that's honestly when I started focusing a little more on TV and film and voiceover, it was because of money.
Yeah,
To make it sound so, but through doing it, I've learned to love it. And voiceover is something that is so complicated and hard, and I'm still, learning so much about that kind of acting, because it is like a different, it's just a different muscle and a different skill set. And so yeah, I mean, for me, that's what made me want to do it. But now it's fun because I think the more ways you are able to act,
hmm,
the more that you can maybe pay the bills doing the thing that you like to do, right? Which is playing pretend.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, at this point, I'd like to let's take a shout out to our sponsor, The Voice Realm. The Everything Voiceover podcast is brought to you by The Voice Realm, where only professional voice actors are listed. Now, good thing about here's an interesting thing. Since you started out doing theater, I happen to believe that theater is probably the for the amount of money that theater actors make. It's astoundingly it's insulting because it's the hardest work out there,
Yeah.
and I was always amazed at such good theater actors, and then now here we are, voiceover actors, where you get into a box for like 15 minutes, and it's so much more lucrative. Even me as a non-union voiceover actor, I feel so bad for all the theater actors because they're so good. And what was your take on just theater compared to commercial and film, and like the acting perspective? Like, did you have to learn a different type of voiceover for theater, and a different type of sound for theater and voice and commercial and all these? And how did you get to compartmentalize each acting technique?
Well, I will say, I hope this doesn't sound too pretentious actory, but I do think that at the end of the day, just being real and true to yourself actually is what any kind of acting requires, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there are sort of technical tricks that you can learn, right? Like for me, it took me a long time to learn that you should slow down in a voiceover audition.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean like slow down, right? But it means like you can take your time. And coming from the Spanish voiceover world, this always happens to us, right? You show up and the read says they're looking for natural, neutral dialect, right? And so you go in and you read it very normally. You'll be like, Taco Bell es delicioso, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they've translated it from English. So then when you actually record it, it inevitably has more Spanish words in it because they do bad translations. So then you have to be like, Taco Bell es delicioso. And so we're like, why does the Spanish language commercial sound like that? And I really believe one of the reasons is that they're trying to fit in all these words because of their crappy translations.
Oh man.
Sorry, that's like a tangent. But you know, at the end of the day, I think it's just about believing what you're saying, making choices, like what do you want, all that basic shit that we always forget, you know.
Yeah, totally.
Myself time included. But like, what is the purpose of this? Even in a spot, right? Like, what is your character saying in that moment? Even if they're selling you a chimichanga, you know.
Yeah.
Like that stuff is really important. Like whenever I sit down and I beat out my voiceover scripts,
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed my booking odds are much higher. And
Yeah.
so the question for myself is, why don't I always do that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, since I do like a majority of the pay-to-play site runs, and I get a lot of auditions every time. I mean, I rarely have gotten the chance to mark it out the way I usually do in studio auditions, and the whole like, who are you talking to? What do you want from them? And that's a skill that I think every voice actor can use. They can toss it after they've learned it, and you know, after they've done it, you know, within a class or learned it a million times. But I think it's just basic acting that gets lost when it comes to newer voice actors. One thing that I figured out was like, you have to end your sentences. That's something that never thought I did, because if you end a sentence, I had a tendency to drawl off at the end of my sentences, like mumble off the end of them. So, and I had to figure that I have to actually point at the end of my sentences to get it to sound like I can end, because I'm a mumbler. If anyone talks to me regularly, I mumble so much, and people can't tell when they listen to my voiceover that's me at all, even remotely.
Yeah.
So,
That's a good
so
trick. I'm gonna steal that, the pointing thing. Actually,
yeah, yeah. If you
up?
point. Not up, just straight ahead. It's even if you have like a word in a script that's so that your brain just speed bumps on.
Yeah.
I always tell people to point during that, and hopefully that usually it just focuses your mind just enough to be able to not worry about the speed bump itself.
Cool.
Yeah. So what was have you seen what's the process of getting into this to Coco? I guess that's an interesting thing, because from what I've known, New York has always been the commercial type atmosphere for voiceover. And then if you want to go into cartoon and film, that's where LA is the big one for that. Or so what was the process like?
Well, I will say just real quick off of what you just said, I've noticed that to be the case. My auditions for video games and for animated TV shows and movies I can't even compare how many more I have here than in New York. In New York, I basically auditioned for Spanish language commercials, like radio spots and
Yeah.
TV, you know? Uh, so I got really lucky, man, with the whole Coco story. So I was called by a casting director who had gotten my name from someone who I still don't know who they are. But this wasn't even, and she called me and she kind of auditioned me on the phone, just talked to me. I remember she asked to speak to my wife at some point.
Really?
As a joke, yeah. This really wonderful woman out here in LA called Barbara Harris. And she called me in and she said, tomorrow you're coming in. I can't tell you what the project is, but you're going to sign all these NDAs. And they're looking for bilingual actors, and you were recommended to me. Okay. So I show up the next day, and there is a room, and it's me and 7 other Latino actors, men and women of all ages, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, okay, so this is the new Pixar movie. And we all were like, oh my God. And they're like, the way that it works is they have like the main characters, which when you see the credits, those are the people who are like in the first credits. And then you have to wait for like 5 minutes for us to come up. And so what we do all the crowd scenes.
Cool.
And then, so you're doing that and you're like, okay, I guess this is like background voice acting, still cool. I'm happy to be here. And then they were like, okay, now we have all these other individual characters that have like 1 to 5 lines. And you guys are just going to basically audition for them in front of us.
Oh, cool.
That was super cool and fun. And so you go up and it's like me and every other guy, we would go for every single guy line. So every skeleton that has a male voice, I recorded,
Wow.
all the band, the chacalacas, they're called. Like there's just the different characters, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Go up and you record all of these voices. And then it was really cool because afterward, a couple of us were asked to stay. And then I got to work on a couple characters for a while with the director, with Lee Unkrich, who was really, really cool and really nice. And just real quick, one thing about him that meant a lot to me was he kept saying to us, he's like, look, this is your culture. So if there's anything at all that is offensive, that is wrong, any language thing, tell me. He was like, this won't count against you. He's like, just tell me what you think. And we had like really cool long discussions about certain moments in the movie. And he was listening to us, And at that moment, you're like, man, why does this guy want to listen to me? But he really did. And that's one of the reasons I think the movie is so authentic. So shout out to that. But yeah, man, so then I got to work with him. And, it's really fucking cool. It's like a dream come true. I grew up on cartoons, And so to be in this beautiful giant studio on the Sony lot and you're seeing these pictures and then they're like, okay, this person is this, they're this age, this is their mood, this is their thing, try out a voice. And this is where I think improv training is really good, know? And I did a lot of clowning training. That's where my background is. And I think that really came in handy for me in those moments. Because it wasn't like you get to go home and think about it. It was like, he's like, okay, Bernardo, stand up. Okay, this guy is, a fat guy. He's in the plaza. He's eating, now do it, It's all gut and instinct. And so it was awesome, dude. So we spent the whole day recording and I went home on cloud 9. And so that's why, honestly, I didn't know if I was going to be in it. And then luckily I am. And that's been really nice and special,
That's great, and Lee. I mean, like I looked him up after I looked up everything about Coco after watching it,
Yeah.
and I realized that like I was always, when it came to Pixar, I was not necessarily raised on Pixar, but when I just got into filmmaking and I went to college for film. Toy Story and all them had come out during my high school years and maybe a little bit earlier in my middle school years, and everyone they had was like Monsters Inc. and Finding Nemo, and those were the ones that I remember as being the Pixar films that was like the heyday of me, like just being gaga over just filmmaking. And Lee, the director, he the last thing he had done with Pixar, I mean, like as far as directing goes, was like Toy Story 3 and co-directed Finding Nemo and Monsters Inc. So the familiarity for I think anyone watching this film, if you haven't seen it, if you loved Toy Story 2 and Finding Nemo and Monsters Inc., this is right along those lines because it's by the same director and it's so beautiful, so good.
It's so good, man.
Oh,
Yeah, Toy Story 3 is amazing too. If you haven't seen that movie is like not a kid's movie.
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's
Yeah.
so good.
It's so hard.
Yeah. Do you have any words of advice from the non voiceover atmosphere? Because I mean, I do tell people that voiceover can be a career, and those careers are usually from people that who want to forge their own path, and they don't live in New York and L.A. But when you were is there a difference? Do you have any advice for people who are willing to come to LA or New York and they're just starting out? Should they take classes with like voiceover casting directors or regular casting? Like you said, you did castings and you did showcases. Is there anything that really struck you as being very useful to you as an actor, or useful to you as someone who's trying to network themselves into the whole situation?
I would say this is not specifically to voiceover, but I think it is the most important thing you can do. Is if you move to New York or LA, the most important thing you can do is go out, see a lot of shit, whatever it is that you like, right? Like if you like voiceover, go to voiceover panels, go to things, go out and find the people who turn you on artistically, right? So if you love a show and that's the kind of voiceover work you want to do, find out when those people are talking at events, when they're doing, and then get involved. And walk up to people and say, hey, I'll do whatever you want for free. I just love what you do. And no one is ever offended by that,
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
it's actually a very nice thing to hear from people. And so go out there, and then that way you will start meeting people who like the same things you do. And those people are who you're going to work with the rest of your life. So many of my voiceover gigs have come from even friends of mine that I made doing a play, and the kind of guys and gals who I have worked with, who we just have similar tastes, Because the other thing is, I think a lot of people move to New York and LA and they just want to get in.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means, right? They just want to like be a part of it, which I get. I want to be a part of it too, right? But I think it's really good to be specific about what that is. If you like improv, then go to UCB and take some classes, right? And you will meet friends who do improv that you like, and then you can get even more specific, and they like this kind of comedy as opposed to that kind of comedy. That is honestly the most important thing you can do, because hanging out with like-minded people that turn you on artistically is going to help motivate you when you have negative $40 in your Chase, checking account, and you're like going to Costco to eat free food samples, Like, really, that's how it is at the beginning, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I had to choose between like $1 pizza slice or like the cheap Chinese food, and can I, eat that for 3 days, like it's just, that's how it is at the beginning. It really is. So just find people that motivate you and inspire you.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's something that's really lost. That I'm glad people are able to listen, if they're able to listen to this interview, to hear that. Sometimes we find ourselves marketing more and not just connecting with people.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
selling yourself just willy nilly to people, and not really just doing the research and being like just putting yourself in the projects that you really want to be a part of. And we put money first in a lot of ways, and I personally have told people they have to go try and take classes with casting directors and whatnot. But if they find that's something I've never thought of. Like if you know a casting director that has cast types of films or things that you love, I mean, why not specifically go to the casting director you want to work with?
Exactly. 100%. That's I've had casting directors say that to me, that everybody wants to be friends with the casting director, right?
Hmm.
And then someone will be like, "Oh, I love your stuff," and then they'll be like, "Oh, what is, did you like my show, whatever, Stranger Things?" And they'll be like, "Oh, I haven't watched that one yet." It's like, well, no, you should be trying to hustle with the casting director of the show you love, right?
Yeah.
Because then when you sit down and talk to them, you actually do love the work they did. Like whoever cast Stranger Things is a badass. It's Carmen Cuba, I know that, but she's a badass. Like she did amazing work on that show, right? Those are all unknown actors. So that's a real thing that you're saying to someone instead of just trying to get a gig, right? Like the work will come. I really believe that.
Yeah, I do try and tell people that if it's a numbers game in one sense, but to add the aspect of human to human interaction, honestly it puts the heart back, the soul back in your body, as opposed to being just this robot who's trying to get stuff, you know.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, that's a really fun, the really good aspect of voiceover that I never really people never really talk about, and it's and so did you ever read anything like motivational or stuff like that to get, because like I think that just by talking to you I can feel like the positivity and niceness there, and I was is that how you've always been, or did you ever just like make a decision yourself to be like, okay, I'm gonna just be the best person I can be and connect?
Well, that's very nice of you to say. I mean, I have always been someone who likes laughing a lot first. So I don't know. I mean, I guess what I'll say is the thing about this business is that bitterness is real, yo. It is
Mm.
hard. I mean, I suffer from this 100%. Because little by little, people that you've worked with will get things, and there are things that all of us want. And it's super hard and very important that we learn not to think that another person's success signifies your failure, right?
Yeah.
And so that is really a hard thing. And a friend of mine who is a mentor of mine, still a good friend, he said to me once, bitterness is like the seed you plant in your body. And he said the more water you put on it, the more that it'll like kind of take over the inside of you, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
definitely.
let's deal with this stuff. I mean, like, I've had friends who had to quit Facebook or Twitter because it made them so angry seeing everybody else's successes, right?
Oh yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and I think one, you have to remember that like, everybody goes through ups and downs in this career, and just none of that is helpful. It just isn't. And this is again, like I do suffer from it, so this isn't do as I do. But
Yeah.
whenever I have those moments, it's really nice that my wife will be like, I don't know how that helps you, you know, what are like just make shit, do the stuff that you like. Because yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but
Oh no, it totally helps, and yeah, thank you so much for being on here. And just another aspect that I usually see a lot is just, negativity in general has a tendency to just the same kind of bitterness to get into your blood, whether it be just going on to like a Facebook post, or like for specifically voiceover and just not giving any information, or just maybe someone asks for something and there's like a snide remark here and there, and it's pointless. I mean, we're all trying to help each other. We all are just trying to figure out how to work this, because there's no set guideline. There's no path that we're all actors, and it's the most weirdest profession to go after, because it's you have to love the art, and I think we have to have kind of support for each other and not be bitter and be happy for one another. It's something that's sometimes very lost when it comes to people just trying. It's a trudge to get the jobs. But yeah, I mean, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I mean, do you have any other bits of advice? Because like this has been like a bit of a treasure trove for both just human beings and just also everyone should go see Coco anyway. I'll probably see it again. I would like to see it in Spanish language with subtitles, just to be able to see if it
really
does.
want to see it in Spanish.
Oh,
This is like whatever, it doesn't matter. But they asked me to come in and do the same thing that I'd done for the Spanish one, and I couldn't because I had booked something for that day, which is great. But it's one of those things as an actor, you're like, What about all the days I wasn't doing something? Why did I have to have like my two possible work things on the same day? But anyway, yeah, I've heard the Spanish version is amazing. My family in Mexico is like obsessed with the movie. They saw it in Spanish, obviously. Yeah.
All right. Let me just take the chance to thank you one more time. Thank you, Bernardo Cubría, for coming on to the Everything Voiceover podcast. Do you have anything, any websites you want to push to people, or any kind of? I know you were doing a podcast. I don't know if you're still doing it. Anything you want to push?
Sure. My website is bernardocubria.com. I'm a playwright, so my plays are on there. So please, if you have anything to do with that, read them and produce them. And I also have a theater podcast that I do off and on. It's called Off and On, a New York Theater Podcast. Check that out. It's been around for about 5 years now. I'm really proud of it. That's basically it.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been the Everything Voiceover podcast. My name is Justin D. Torres. The Everything Voiceover podcast is brought to you by The Voice Realm, where only professional voice actors are listed. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Bernardo. Thanks for coming on.
Of course, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.